All right. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking out the time to come for this session. So this session is a little different to what I have been doing earlier. So I've done sessions on consulting slides, obviously done a lot of sessions on analytics as well. Then recently I did one on what if scenario on Excel. But this is very exciting for me as well. This is a combined session, something I don't think I've ever done before. So Jasmine and I will be doing it jointly, but we talk about the same thing, right? We talk about the Gestalt principles, but Jasmine is going to open up the session. She, of course, will, introduce herself, talk about Gestalt principles in data visualization, and then I will take it one step further and talk about how consulting firms use the principles, maybe directly or indirectly, how you can find a lot of these templates and samples available online. And finally, how generative AI comes into the mix, right? Like a lot of you might feel, so Havish, but really like generative AI is for content, right? Like how can it help you with design? So very exciting things that generative AI can do as well. So we look at that as well, right? So I'm going to stop my sharing and Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope I'm audible to everybody, right? Just give me a moment. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jasmine, and I'll start off a little bit about my introduction to you all so you guys know who am I and what I do. So I'm the founder of Buzzscript, which is a content consulting and social media marketing agency. I also do a lot of personal branding. My agency is pretty new, but I have been doing this for over past 7 years. I have explored extensively in writing and editorials. I also specialize in creating content around, different audiences. I have a global reach in terms of that. I have explored a lot of content work in the EMEA markets, MENA markets, UAE, global, and I have worked with over 50 clients across 15 countries. And a little bit more about myself, that I exclusively like to work a lot more in the B2B, B2C, SaaS and fintech spaces. And if you talk about my academics, I am equipped with an MBA in finance and marketing. That's where I was introduced to Havish sir. And it's been a fruitful collaboration since over the years. I've had the privilege of working with him. So that's really a great honor that today I'm a part of this session. And I would like to share more about my understanding of the topic that we are going to cover today. And lastly, not that important, but I identify myself as a creative person because I take a lot of interest in fine arts, calligraphy, journaling, digital illustration, and learning languages. So yeah, so that is all about me. And now we will move over to the presentation. We'll continue with that. Just a moment. Okay. So what is Gestalt principle? Before we start, I would like to start off with a question that have you ever wondered why certain designs feel more visually appealing than others? Right? To answer this, well, these principles are fundamental to understanding how we perceive the world around us and why these principles can be applied, across various fields from design to psychology and marketing. And it helps you understand how you can take a visual information and your brain can comprehend into meaningful patterns, and you can make sense of that data. And as I'm talking about Gestalt principle, it's not just, applied in data visualization. It can be used in design field, in psychology, in art, in marketing and advertising. It's, of course, data visualization, films and cinematography. And I'll quickly, go over one by one, briefly, very briefly, to cover these. So when I talk about the use of Gestalt principles in design, it's basically a design and psychology principle. So when we talk about the use of Gestalt principle in designing, I'm talking about graphic design, logo design, layout design, where you arrange certain elements on a website page or app in such a way that it is visually appealing and makes your experience easy to navigate, whether it's an app. You might have heard about UX, UI design, right? The interface designs. There we apply the principles of Gestalt principles, right? Then when we move on to psychology, it is a fundamental theory of psychology where people study about perception and learning. By that, I mean that it can be used in understanding of how you see the world around you, how you see different data, different patterns around you, and you make sense of that. Next is art. If I broadly talk about it, it's like painting, sculpture, photography. But how can we apply the concept of Gestalt in this field is like artists use Gestalt principle when they arrange elements on a canvas, right? This is what make art as visually appealing and pleasing and more meaningful. Okay. They also use Gestalt principle to create illusions of depths and perspectives in their painting. That is how you understand a painting. Behind that, a lot of concepts are applied so that you see a painting and you understand why it is how it is, right? Next is your marketing and advertising. Of course, here we make use of Gestalt principle to create visually appealing and memorable designs. By that, I means you might have seen, those attention grabbing advertisements there. You see in website designs as well. Here also, when we, do certain advertisements, we do certain anything like that. So there also, there is like packaging design is there, print advertising is there to make an ad more striking and memorable. We use Gestalt principles, right? And we will cover the data visualization in more detail because that is what our theme of today is. The film and cinematography, I would say this, we use the Gestalt principle to convey the visual emotion and story of what you're seeing on your screen. So that is a few application of Gestalt principle in brief, how we use. Now we will move on to a little bit more about the use of Gestalt principle in data visualization. So before we start, let's cover what do we understand by this principle in data visualization. So when I talk about Gestalt principle, it is basically the graphical representation of certain information and data, how you are using certain visual elements like charts, graphs, and map to present that data clearly and effectively. The purpose of applying this Gestalt principle in data visualization is to make certain data more accessible and understandable, right? It helps users as you see certain patterns, trends, and outliers in the data. By outliers, I mean, you can notice certain anomalies in your data. If it is not presented correctly, you might find it difficult to understand the data just by visually looking at it. And it is easy to pick out certain anomaly or differences in a data, which if not presented visually correct way, it's not that easy to pick out certain things from a certain data, that what information you are basically looking at, right? The focus here that we are going to today talk about is the static data, like the graphs and charts and the visual representation that you see on the dashboards, and how you can use this principle to enhance the clarity and aesthetics. So what you are going to present through your data, you can communicate those insights in a more quicker manner and in a more better manner, right? The commonly used tools where you can apply Gestalt principles in data visualization is Tableau, Power BI. And using these tools, you can easily create a good visual representation of data. But that data will become more, impactful if you know how to apply these principles. So now I'll go one by one over these principles. Please note that there are multiple principles of Gestalt. Today, we are only covering what is applicable for data visualization. When you study the Gestalt principles in terms of design or in psychology, there are even more principles. But today, we are just keeping ourselves restricted and, to the principles that we can easily apply in the data visualization. So starting off with the first principle is proximity. In simple word, proximity means how close certain objects are to each other. If you see on the screen, there are two images with several data points on your screen. When the objects are in proximity, means if they are placed together in closer, like they are placed together closer, what your mind does, it comprehends as, and it makes a connection between them. When you group elements together, it helps you in your data understanding. It enhances that data understanding. So when you look at these sections of data, these points and these points and these points, your mind comprehends, okay, these are three different groups of data together. What this information means, that is another thing, but just by looking at the image, you can make sense, okay, the images, the data points together are part of the same group. We can understand this with the help of another image. As you can see in this particular graph, we are looking at sales figure of two groups, furniture and tech. How did my mind comprehend this as quickly just by looking at the image? Why? Because as you can see, certain objects here, I'm talking about this histogram where the graphs are placed closely to each other. And this particular area denotes a certain group of furniture. This is one part of the data that I'm looking at. The second part of the data is the tech, right? So when I look at this graph, just by the proximity of placing these objects or data together, I'm making sense that, okay, in this graph, we are talking about two certain groups, two certain aspects, which is furnitures and tech, and we are representing its sales. All the objects that are placed together over here are belong to the group of furniture, and all the objects that are here belong to the tech group. So I hope it's making sense to you all. And let's move on to another principle if that was clear to you. The next one is the principle of similarity. Now, it is almost similar to the concept of proximity, but it is a little different from that, because in this particular principles, objects that share the same color, shape, size, it can be any parameter, which can help you understand that they belong to the same group. Today, I'm taking the example to make it clear to you that we can do this by just by using same colors. In the previous example here, you can see that all the data together were just placed either together or they were placed a little bit far away from each other. But just by making it in two different colors, like as you can see on the screen, the gray and the green, your mind easily comprehends that these are two different data that we are looking at. Probably the green is denoting something else, and probably the gray part is denoting something else when we are looking at this certain data population, right? So for this concept is basically objects sharing the same color or shape or sizes even can be perceived or related to the same part of group. Let's understand this in a different way. Now, when you are putting together at a data, whenever there are identical things, right? Here, as you can see, the shape is completely same as each other. But just by contrasting it with a different color, your mind understands that out of these data points, these particular parts are of same group, while these, even though they are not in proximity, means this one is on the left side, this one is on the right side, there is a difference, there is some other data in between, but these and these belong to the same group, while these 6 data points belong to the same group. Now, let's understand this through a little bit more graphical representation. As you can see, here also we are talking about a profit and sales graph. As you can see, earlier we were talking about tech and furniture with two graphs, right? Here, what we have done is we have taken different shapes and we have taken different colors. As you can see, these blue quadrants represent the tech. These red circles represent the furniture. So from just by looking at these particular dotted points on a graph, you can still make sense of the data by seeing that these red color circles represent the furnitures. The profit may be in a different time span. For example, different year points are taken or different month points are taken, but still we are talking about one group of data, which is your furniture. When we are talking about the blue quadrants on the graph, we are talking about the tech. So I hope you are able to understand how proximity works and how the similarity works, right? If yes, I'll be moving on to the another graph to make this a little bit more comprehensive for you to understand. Let's look at this graph. Here also, we are now using two principles together, cohesiveness and similarity. But still, you can see, even though the principle of proximity is used over here, it's still representing different data group. And we are not clubbing them together as the same group. Why? Because of the color differences in this data. As you can see, we are talking about quarterly region-wise sales. We are talking about the blue color denotes the quarter one, this yellow color denotes the quarter two, the green color denotes the quarter three, and the orange color denotes the quarter four. So even we are talking about the north zone, these different colors help me understand that what each data point is demonstrating. And when we move on to the next zones, such as south, east, and west, the similar colors are still helping us to understand that these data points belong to which group, right? So whenever I look at these yellow data points, I'm understanding that this is talking about the quarter two of the north region. This is how you interpret this particular graph, right? By using the similarity principle of Gestalt. looking at this particular graph, that as you can see, it is also a bar graph, but this is also segregated using different colors, where different colors denote different objects together. So when we are talking about the yearly fruit production in Canada, let's say, the red color graph denotes the apple, blue denotes the blueberries, and so on. So whenever we talk about, let's say, green, whenever I look at the green and I know what does this green represent, I know all these green datas are part of the same group, that is the grapes. This is showing the production of one particular fruit, which is grapes. So this is what the similarity principle of Gestalt means. Okay. Now let's move on to closure. Now this is actually a very simple principle. There is nothing more to it. Why? Because whenever you look at an image, just by looking at it, even if the picture is not complete, your mind is capable to filling that missing information to create a complete object, right? So when you look at this simple image, I'm taking an example of a graphic first, and then we'll move on to the data. So when we look at this particular graphic, as you can see, this particular part is not completed in this picture. This is the white space we are talking about. This is the white space we are talking about. And this has, like, if you look at this circle, this is supposed to be a circle, but a quadrant of this circle is missing from here to here. And if we do the same with another 4 circles, as you can see that your mind is comprehending this particular picture, that this missing quadrant form together a square shape. Now, how did I come to this conclusion? Just by looking at this, I'm able to understand that even if a quadrant of a circle is missing and we put together 4 circles together in proximity and 1 quadrant each is missing, it is actually making a full square shape. Why? Because my mind has itself filled with the missing information. And this is what I mean when I say the principle of closure, right? Let's understand this particular principle in the context of, again, a graphical representation. Now, you can see the profit is there, the sales is there, and I have just used these points, right? But it's very easy for your mind to understand that there could be possibly this trend, right? From this point to this point, you can see there is an upward trend. After reaching its peak over here, there is a downward trend. Even though I have not connected these points in a line, your mind is able to understand this image as such that there is a profitability increase. After a certain point, there is a decrease. So the closure Gestalt principle describes that we perceive open structured, as in they are not closed by certain lines or certain figures, in itself as closed complete image. Whenever there is a possibility, your mind interprets such images also on its own. So not every time you need a line to represent a data. Just by putting graphs in a certain way, you can still make sense of that data. Now, closure and enclosure are very closely related principles. Enclosure is derived from the enclosure principle is derived from the closure principle. But here what we actually do is we actually enclose this in a boundary. So whenever objects are enclosed within a defined area, we understand that it belongs to a certain groups. Things which is inside a clear boundary will be perceived as the same group. When you look at this data, you can see that this particular area is enclosed by this particular graph, right? And here we say about the predicted. So here in this graph, you can see that we are looking at a closed space, and out of this particular area is what the prediction is made for this particular data. Now, when we move on to the another image, you can see certain data points are there. If you look very closely, again, a lot of data points are there scattered all over. But when we use the enclosure principle, like we are closing all these, we are able to see certain enclosure, certain boundaries to the data, which help you identify the data in 4 different parts. This particular part, which is very closely, the data points are very in proximity to each other. This is quadrant 1, for example. And now, as you can see, we are using principle of proximity, principle of similarity, and principle of enclosure together. Why? Because we are using different data points that are scattered differently, and they are placed in close proximity to each other. We are also looking at different colors to denote which color depict similar group. And we are also enclosing it in a space to make sure that this particular data has 4 different spaces and boundaries that we are talking together. So looking at this particular graph, you're not just looking at a graph, you are seeing 3 principles of Gestalt applied together, right? if we look at this simple graph again, you can see that we have applied the principle of proximity together and principle of enclosure together. Now, in this particular graph, we are talking about this certain section of category just by enclosing this particular part of the graph with a boundary, right? So this is what the enclosure principle of Gestalt means. Now, the next principles is even more easy to follow. Why? Because this is principle of continuity. This principle, in simple words, tell that human eye will follow the smoothest path when you're viewing lines, irrespective of how a line is drawn. So just by dotted line in a certain pattern, your mind is capable of identifying the curves, the lines, everything together, which is a part of your data, right? Okay. I'll also elaborate a little bit why this particular principle is easy to follow, because it basically guides the viewer's eye. By that, I mean that by using lines or certain curves, you are able to connect data points in your mind, and you are able to guide as a viewer's attention so that it makes it easier for you to follow the data, right? You can use this particular principle to show certain trends or certain relationships. You can use the lines and curves to connect different data points, which can help you visualize certain trends, across different variables, let's say. There is also a sense of continuity, which is why the name of this principle is such. Why? Because by using lines and curves, you are able to connect elements in a visualization. And then with the help of that, you are able to create a sense of cohesion. Okay. Now, looking at this particular graph, what we are looking at is, we are talking about sales and date. As you can see, there is a simple line, there is a data point, and there is a simple line. Now, what your eyes does looking at this graph, it follows automatically this particular line or curve or whatever sequence or shape, so that you can understand that there is a certain relationship between the two elements, right? This particular data point is connected with the trend which is going. And this particular trend can be connected by using different data points over here, over here. So even though, just imagine that there are different data points over here in different parts. When I connect this together, it forms a line, and this is helping me to understand a certain trend which is going on over here, similar to this kind of image. So when you are connecting these point of continuities, you are getting a certain trend. This is what the continuity principle talks about. Again, even though the path is broken, you are able to associate it in your mind that these are curved lines that follow a similar path. Even though this particular curved line is not connected with each other, you can still see the continuity. This is what the principle talks about. Now, this principle is pretty important. Why? Because we talk about two different things over here in club together in the same principle. We talk about symmetry and we talk about order. So your brain is capable of perceiving ambiguous shapes whenever you look at ambiguous shapes, and it identifies at in a simple structured manner. So when you look at this particular logo, very famous logo, all you see first are 5 circles together, right? This is because your mind is capable of identifying the shapes, because it helps you bring some balance and structure to your design. When you look at this particular image, even in its silhouette, you can think of different objects that this particular shadow represents. But when you break it down, like when you break down the design, you can see this is simply made up of a circle, a triangle, and a rectangle or square. So your mind is capable of taking shapes and then understanding it in a breakdown structure, which brings more symmetry, more order to your design. Now, the seventh principle is the figure and ground. This principle we talk about, either objects can be placed in the foreground of a certain space, for example, of a graph or any background, or it can be used as a background, right? So two images are there in front of you. A small square is a part of both the images. One image you can perceive one image to be in the foreground and one image seems to be in the background. Why? Because this space seems to be like the background of this particular white box. And for this image, this gray box seems to be in the foreground of the entire white space. So this is what we talk when we talk about this particular principle. How do we understand this particular principle in the context of the data? So when you have a map, for example, and we are talking about something like worldwide sales, and the smaller circle represents lesser sale value and the bigger circle represents that there is a big sale value, right? As you can see, these circles are in the foreground of the countries which is used as a background. So either these data points stand out in front of the figure or they blend into the background. So in this case, what we are seeing is that these circles that represent sales basically, these are at the foreground of the background of this particular map, right? And just by the size of using these data points, you can understand whether the value of the sale is small or whether the value of the sale is big. Okay. Now that you have understood the different design principles that I have just talked about, I'm going to show you a few good examples of using Gestalt principle in data visualization. So here we will see how you can use those principles to, enhance your graphs. Now here, as you can see, there is a chart in front of you. You can see the key categories. You can see the certain scorings. This shows the negative side. This shows the positive side. The colors represent whether people or the customer, it's a customer satisfaction survey. So it shows whether people are unsatisfied or whether people are satisfied. So for example, we are commonly used to seeing bar charts from, reading them from bottom up like this, right? Just by flipping over, making it a horizontal, we have now created an outlier, which I had mentioned before, something which your brain notices even faster. Because something we are used to, if you go by a little tweak, like if you tweak the data a little bit or the visualization technique a little bit, your brain tends to notice things faster. So when you're looking at this horizontal diverging bar graph, just by looking at the image, you are able to make yourself a differentiation in your mind. Okay, all these orange part on the left side denote that the customers are not happy, and what they're not happy are these categories, this percentage, right? And when you're looking at this particular side, you can see that these many percentages of customers are happy with respect to longevity or maybe brands or products. So this together, you have visualized different categories, different scoring, negative and positive. You have used the principle of similarity. You have used the principle of cohesive, the continued, the proximity, sorry. So you have used the principle of proximity and you have used the principle of similarity to present this data. Now, let's move on to another example. This is something you guys might have seen on certain application, on certain websites, why we notice some elements of the graphics faster, why it takes us longer to notice a few things. So when we see this particular design, you are not making any sense because nothing is highlighted over there. What is a good point? Like, is it good? Is this data bad? What are we doing over here? Just by simplifying and adding a few elements to this particular graph, now the image becomes slightly better. Why? Because when you see the 8.2% POP, which is point of purchase in sales, and this percentage is being highlighted over here, you are noticing that, okay, there is a slight improvement as compared to the previous data. Now, the focus line of this particular graph is the value of sale, which is highlighted as compared to this, which was blending it with your percentage, with your annual targets and everything. So when you see the annual target was $150,000 and the sales was made 47,359, you can see it has completed, let's say, a 32% of the sale. So our brain prefer things that are simple and orderly. So just by emphasizing on certain area of your data, you are able to understand where to focus more. By simplifying these data visualization and following the Gestalt principle, right, you can bring more order and structure in the way you present your data. Now, we are talking a little bit more about how you can apply it. So there are different ways, basically, you can apply the Gestalt principles of data visualization in your technique. One of them is grouping. What you can do is you can group related data points together. By grouping them, it will make easier for your viewers to identify different patterns and trends, okay, that we saw in the principles of similarity and proximity. Am I audible, right? So
Yep.
Okay. Now, next one is hierarchy. By creating a visual hierarchy within your charts and graph, you can emphasize on the most important information that we saw in the horizontal bar graph, right? There was a clear visual hierarchy that we were talking about. You can also use this particular principle by ensuring that certain elements within your charts and graphs are aligned properly, which we just saw in the previous graph, where the certain elements were organized in certain way so that it creates a little bit more sense of order and balance in whatever you're trying to present. Also, I would like to emphasize that when you're presenting, you don't need to fill the entire screen with lots of information. You can effectively use the white space. You can use the principle of this particular one. Let me show you this particular figure and ground principle by ensuring whether to use the white space as your strength of data. Sometimes using as little like as much as your white space and emphasizing a certain data point in your white space can have a bigger impact than what you would achieve by putting all the information, all the data cluttered together in your space, right? And definitely last one is the color. By using selected colors, by using selected you can, you can distinguish easy your data points, and it will enhance the readability of your charts and graphs. Why? Because just by using certain colors, you can create the visual impact it would have if otherwise it will not have if you would just use the similar color across your different graphs and charts. So make sure to use more colors in your data. Now, let's take a few examples of a few case study. This you can perceive on your own and understand which principle is being utilized here, how we have used it, and what impact we can get it just by visually perceiving it. So this particular case is of the New York Times coronavirus tracking map. As you can see, we are talking about the average daily cases per 100,000 people in the past week. The lighter colors denote the fewer cases, while the more extreme range of like these more darker colors enhance the more daily cases per the 1,000 people who were infected in the past week. So here, if you notice in this particular, we are looking at the US data. And if you see, there is a principle of proximity and similarity applied together. Okay. Why? Because the areas, the data points that are put together are in closer proximity, that shows that there is a severity of infection rate just by being put together more cohesively. We can see that this particular area or this particular area is severely affected more as compared to this particular area or this particular area where there is no data points because it's not in proximity to each other. Similarly, there is also a principle of similarity applied. Why? Because this map has utilized color-coded circles or color-coded graphs to represent different regions that are grouped together by proximity. So by using this color, you can see that this particular color is also, that this particular region is closer to each other. Plus, it is also one of the regions that has a very high infection rate, right? So similar colors can be used to visually cluster regions that have a similar infection rate. You can do the same in different data, different charts, where you can use both these principles together, that is proximity and similarity, when you are depicting something on your map, right? So the use of proximity and similarity makes it easy for you to quickly identify the areas with high or low infection rates as compared to the other regions. And lastly, I'll go over quickly over a second case study, which I've taken from the Gapminders. In this, you can notice a lot of variables. You can notice health, you can notice income. You can also notice the range, which is from poor to rich. And the life expectancy in terms of health is there from sick to healthy. The healthy people live longer. So this is where the years is talking about. There are also income levels. So there is a lot of thing going on in the data. How to understand this data? Because there is a lot of variables put together. There you can see a lot of countries also. So how do we understand this? Simply by applying the Gestalt principle of proximity, similarity, and continuity, you can understand this particular data. As you can see, this visualization uses big bubbles, right? The colorful bubbles. These represent the country, their size, their color, and their position, right? So as you can see through these data points, we can understand the trend which is going on here from here to here, that we can see how many people who are living under $1,000, they have a lower life expectancy because poor income level significantly impacts or can be associated with the poor life expectancy or a lower value of health. And when you talk about USA, as you can see, the income level is higher as the healthy or the life expectancy is as well. So similar colors can be used to visually cluster region again. Sorry, not the this thing. So you just focus on not the notes on the figure. So here what you can see is the different colors denote the different regions And by using the principles of proximity and similarity, you can see which areas can be grouped together. So India and China are similar to each other in a lot of context. Why? Because using the principle of similarity of same colors, we can see that even though they are different in terms of income level, but there is certain cohesiveness, or in certain demographics, they are quite similar, right? So yeah. Also, if you notice, there is also a chart for you to understand this particular data. The smaller bubbles also represent the size of population. So one of the parameters in which we can find India and China very similar to each other would be in terms of population. Why? Because the size is the parameter through which we can understand that the population size of these two countries are quite similar to each other, right? So yeah, so this is how you can use the different principles, and identify different trends, relationship between different variables. So yeah, so that would be all today from my end. I hope these principles made sense to you. With the help of different examples and with the help of different bar graphs and everything, you were able to at least understand a little bit more about how you can use the Gestalt principle of design. And now I would like to hand it over to Havish sir to take this further. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. I'll share my screen. Perfect. So we will continue, everyone, from where Jasmine left off. I'll first tell you what all I'm going to cover in the next maybe 30 minutes or so. So I want to first talk about how consulting firms, so you're looking at BCG, McKinsey, Bain, and even the other, the second category of consulting firms. So consulting, research, auditing. So PwC, Accenture, Gartner, how they create their charts. So I'll tell you how to search for these reports yourself on the internet. I will also tell you how you can readily, in one single Google image search, find literally thousands of McKinsey charts. So I'll give you the tip for that. Then I'll also share the website where you can find something called McKinsey Chart of the Day, which is again a beautiful collection of different types of charts. All of them, in some way or other, are referring to the Gestalt principles. Then a collection of different consulting presentations. I'll also give you live examples. So I'll show you projects that I have personally worked on, both on Power BI and on Tableau. And we will also, in fact, work on Power BI and Tableau. So I'll show you a quick example how enclosure, proximity, all of that work real life, right? When you work on Power BI or Tableau. And then finally, how AI can be used to understand Gestalt principles as well, right? And then, of course, following the right people is very important. At least one person's reference I'll share with you. That would be a good start for you. And then you can take that forward. Okay, perfect. So let me also look at the chat window to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing out. Perfect. What I do, I think a lot of you already know me. I'll not take too long on this. So my name is Havish. I run a firm called Havish Consulting. We are an analytics firm. We have done over 1,500 corporate workshops, 45 plus clients, 150 projects. So we do the entire gamut of digital transformation. So analytics, automation, dashboarding, visualization, also focusing on the process creation and the workflow architecture. We are a member of the Microsoft Partner Network, member of NASSCOM, member of CII. I was also listed as a 40 under 40 analytics. The clients we work with is a very interesting combination. So right now we're doing a project with Chayos, where we're actually teaching them pretty much what you are all learning in today's session. Earlier I was with DS Group for a training. DS is Dharampal Satyapal. They own brands like Catch, Rajnigandha, Paspas. Again, I was teaching them how generative AI can be used for better storytelling. And then again, a lot of firms across finance, consulting, etc. What we do can be very well understood on this slide. So we help companies go through the entire stages of analytics in terms of maturity. So if you look at the stage, like the journey or the life cycle, you start with descriptive, where you first talk about looking at what happened. We are not looking at why something happened or what is going to happen. We just analyze the past, postmortem. Then you talk about diagnostic, where you talk about why has something happened. For example, if my sales have gone down, of course, it's a bad thing, but let's understand the root cause and drill down to why it happened. Is it because one of the models was not selling? Is it because there was a product recall? Is it because customers didn't like the product, right? Then we talk about predictive. Predictive talks about on the basis of our past data, what is going to happen, right? Like a regression model. Prescriptive is the most difficult one because prescriptive talks about how do you make something happen. Like my target could be that, for example, for today's session, we received about 80 odd registrations. And at the moment, we have 24 of us, right, in the workshop. So obviously, there is a conversion rate. For Jasmine and me as instructors, we would like nothing more than to have more people because we feel we have a lot to share. So our focus always will be to increase our conversion rate, right? That is where prescriptive comes in. For example, what is it that we can do in the way we communicate, in the way we market ourselves to improve our conversion rate, right? Okay. Um, Again, I'll not get too much into the detail. All of this you can find on our website as well. But let me come back to my slide. Now, the first thing is everything starts by finding the right content. As Jasmine showed you Gapminder, in fact, that's a website you should absolutely go to. You can note it down if you want. It's already there on the slide. We'll share that with you. So the Gapminder Foundation, everyone has these beautiful visualization. I'll just give you an example. So when you go to resources and you sort of select one of these visual, do you see I can hover my mouse and, for that particular country, I can see the numbers. In fact, it also has a play button where from 1800 to date, I can actually see the change over time. Now, you might say, Havish, this is very nice, but like, how do we make all of this? That is what I'll show you today on Power BI, right? But if you're searching for a report online, this is how you do it. You put the name of a firm, you put in the name of the sector, the topic, or the keyword, and then you put PDF after it. So these are some of the firms you can look at. So the big three, the big four, research firms, advertising firms, consulting firms, right? So I'll give you an example. It could be any sector, any topic, right? So I'm going to search for FMCG. For example, if I type Accenture FMCG PDF, you will see there are dozens of reports freely available. Check this out. See, if you search for a PPT, you won't find anything. But if you search for a PDF, do you see my point? Do you see that there are these actual real reports available? And exactly what Jasmine was telling you about, for example, enclosure. This is an enclosure, isn't it? Think about it. After all, there is a slide which has a lot of content on it. There's some text on the left, and there's the content on the bottom right corner. But if you see the way the enclosure happens, the way the proximity is there, the way all the boxes come together, right? So this is what all of you have to do. You have to look at the theoretical aspect, what is Jasmine covered, which might seem very theoretical, but you have to realize these are very, very practical things, right? I mean, after all, when we build dashboard, look at this. And I'll just for an example, I'll tell you what topic this relates with, even though I'm sure you can figure it out. So if you look at similarity, right? Where we spoke about how objects of similar color, shape, size obviously mean that they are grouped together. Look at this one. Do you see how there are three colors that have been used? One is for analyze and strategize. One is for enable, execute, and service. Imagine for a moment if the colors were all the same. It would have been very difficult for me to understand which child talks to which parent. And that is why using these colors is very, very important, right? Again, if you see here, I mean, I'm not going to tell you which one of the principles it connects to, but that is some good food for thought where you can actually look at these reports and then ask yourself and train yourself to identify these reports better. And this is not one report I'm talking about. You can pretty much search for anything. Let's say I'm searching for, I mean, this is a great example. Look at this. Do you see, even though they are only using two colors, they're still able to really get the message across. If you look at the way the growth has been shown like this. Okay, the other thing you can do is I can search. Let me come back to my slide. I can search for this keyword on Google. What you have to do is to search for SVGZ space site:McKinsey.com. Now, interestingly, this doesn't work with other firm, but only with McKinsey. Don't ask me why. I'll also share this with you so that you can try it right now. So if you notice, if I go back and I type SVGZ site mckinsey.com and you go to an image search, it is crazy. There are like thousands, okay, not hundreds. There are thousands of examples from the most prestigious management consulting firm in the world available. And this is terrific, right? Look at this. This is such a good example of similarity. How, even though everything is blue color, look at the way that we are able to show similarity by having the same color. Look at this one. Look at the way that your attention automatically goes to the blue color because everything else is grayed out, but there are two that are blue in color. Again, I mean, I'm not going to talk to you about all these things, but this is some homework for you in a way where you have to go back, go through this and sort of find everything that is there. Okay, look at this. It's a crazy number of slides, design, diagrams that you have available here. Right? I mean, you can really get lost in this, trying to look at all the various combinations. Even though, practically speaking, there are only maybe 15, 20, 25 charts that they're using. It's the way they would tweak it, the way they would customize it that makes it really, really good. And that is why McKinsey charts are considered some of the best charts out there, right? Okay. Moving on. There is also something called McKinsey chart of the day. You can just Google it. McKinsey chart of the day is also a great way to look at their charts, So this is like a good collection of charts, as you can see. And this again is an infinite list. So the more you scroll, the more you will find, right? Look at this. So there are dozens and dozens of examples that have been given here. Again, you will really have to think about what Gestalt principle does the chart connect to. Can you see this one? Let me open it. Okay, check this out. Do you see how it's a pair, like two columns, two columns, two column, two column, two column? So that is where Jasmine spoke to you. If I can come back. Proximity, right? Do you see how we are grouping some of the columns together? Like here we have furniture and tech. Similarly, here if you notice, we have baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z grouped together. Now you might say, but why is it that we are using proximity as well and colors as well? See, it's always good to have multiple layers of principles, right? After all, it's not that you can only do one thing. You can always combine multiple things together. All right, going back. There is a link. Again, I'll be sharing this with you. This is a collection of 100+ consulting presentation, even though I've told you how to search for it. If you search the way I told you, name of the firm, topic, and PDF, you'll find thousands of reports available. How do I know that? Because if you see, I have like 400 slides that I have created. Do you see this, everyone? This is a collection of various firms that I have collected meticulously. And if you see on the left side, I have categorized it into different types of charts. Let me give you an example. Look at diagrams. So these are different diagrams that I have. Let me show you something else. Look at the pie chart. Now, everybody might say, Havish, there is only one pie chart, but there isn't. This is a bar of pie. This is a pie of pie. This is a, I'm not really sure what the name is, I've forgotten, but it is something like a tree map. I think we call it a sunburst, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just Google that. Now I'm also curious. I think we call it a sunburst chart, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, here we go. We call it a sunburst chart, right? And these are not examples from any random firm, okay? These are Deloitte, EY, KPMG, Accenture, right? And I'll show you one more. Even if you look at tables, which people might say, it's a table, right? Like how much can you improve a table? Do you see the proximity here, everyone? Like the grouping? If I can relate it to one of the points that Jasmine had mentioned earlier. Jasmine, help me a little bit. This would be enclosure, right? Where we sort of are like making a bracket to show that two things are coming together.
Yes. We were
Right?
creating
Perhaps.
boundaries together.
Right? So this is like a boundary, everyone. And you see how nice it is? Like there are colors as well, but the fact that you are sort of putting a bracket, we call it a brace actually, on a few of the points shows you that the points are connected. Again, I mean, you can look at various examples that are available. So try to understand that data, examples, everything is around you. You just have to know how to find it, which is what we have helped you with, right? Okay, moving on. So I will now be showing you, I mean, of course, in my job as a consultant, I create a lot of these reports, as you can see. I just give you a quick glimpse. These are the type of reports that have been created on Power BI, on Tableau. Like I won't describe them in detail, but just by looking at them, I'm just telling you not what I like to create, but what companies want to see. And I work with a lot of large companies. So these are the type of reports that we create for them. And you see, they're not all the same style. Like the design language is very different. And that is the point, right? That you have to keep on experimenting, and experimenting. You can't just say that, okay, I've learned 5 principles, I'll only use the same principle. It doesn't work like that. You have to keep on trying new combinations every time. Right? Okay, now let me show you a few live examples. I think you will like that before coming to generative AI. All right. So I will first show you on Tableau and then I'll show you on Power BI. Remember, both Tableau and Power BI are completely free, which means you can all download it. Power BI is not available on the Mac, only on Windows, but Tableau is available both on Windows and the Mac, right? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch. All right. I will connect to an Excel file that is there on my desktop. Right? Have a look. And what I want to do is create a map. Remember the one that Jasmine had showed you earlier? If I can just remind all of you, something like this, it looks very cool, right? Even though this is what we call a chloropeth. If I can just show you the name once. And I hope I have the name correctly. Yeah, it's called a choropleth. My mistake. So we call it a choropleth chart. And this is how it looks like. Now you'll be like, Havish, we can't do this on Excel. Of course, you can't make it on Excel, but you can do this on Tableau, which is what I would like to show you. Have a look. Something like this. I'll come back to Tableau. It's very simple. All I have to do is, I will, like you make a pivot table on Excel, I'm going to double click, right, on my country, right? So it automatically plots the map, as easy as that. Now I will go to my chart type in the top right corner and I will change it to a map. That way it will show me the boundary. But we want to go to the level of the state. So I will click on the plus sign and that will take me to the state. Now we only want to filter United States, for example, or let's select India, right? So I will now put my country in the filter and I will select only the one that I want, which is India. Apply. And as you can see, it zooms into India. Now you might say, it's great, but like, what about the colors? Like, why is it all blue? The reason is that we have not decided what we want. And there are many different ways you can do it. For example, if I put my sales in the color, do you see what is happening? There is a range of value, which you can see on the right corner. 492 is the state with the minimum sale. 1 lakh is the state with the maximum sales. It looks very nice. And I can also change the color. So I can go to color and I can decide that I don't want a blue color. Maybe I want a green and a red like this. So states with higher sales will be green, lesser will be red. But if I remove the color, I can also put the name of the state in the color. That means every state will come as a different color. See, that is completely up to you. It is your choice how you want to present the data. As one of you was asking earlier, there is no rule that says that only this you can do or only this you can do. That is completely up to you how you want to make it. And that is the creativity that you have to bring as a consultant, right? Where you have to keep on trying different combinations all the time, right? Okay. I'm going to come back to your question towards the end about how do you build a career in data analytics, right? I'll make sure I answer it, but towards the end of the session, right? But I hope all of you were able to see the example. In fact, let me change it to US so you can see United States. right? Let's remove India from here. Okay. That's pretty much what we did, a choropleth chart. And then, of course, you can add the sales label and all of that. But what about the circle of different sizes? That I will show you on Power BI, so that I can show you both the tools. So let me open Power BI now. Same data. I will tell you how to make a dynamic chart where you can see the change over time. It's very cool. Okay, have a look. So I will open Power BI. It again is a completely free software. On the top left corner, I will select my Excel workbook, everyone. I will select Global Superstore. Just like creating a pivot table, when you select your file and the sheet, and I load it, Alok, some states were not added because in our data, those states were not there. That is why. I'm not saying that the data covers every state in the country. The sample data that I loaded might not have had all the states. That's the reason. I think it only has 25 states that are shown, right, in my data set. Okay. So the one we'll create is the one similar to Gapminder. That is a scatter chart. This one. Let me focus on it. So that is a scatter chart, everyone, here. So in my scatter chart, let me make this a little bigger. What I'll do is I'll keep my sales and my profit. So if you notice, my sales comes in the x-axis, profit comes in the y-axis. Why is it only one circle? Because it is adding up the total sales. That's not what we want. So what I'll do is, after adding my sales and profit, I will add something to the value. For example, I will add my region. So now you notice every region is shown. For example, we have Western Europe, we have Central America, and so on. But we also have different markets. So if I keep my market in the legend, then it does the grouping. So you notice there are only 5 colors: Africa, APAC, Europe, Latin America, North America. And there are 23 regions that are shown right now. Let me also apply a border and shadow so you can see it properly. Okay, here we go. It looks very cool, right? But why is the size the same? Because the size also should have something, right? So maybe I want to see the number of customers, right? So I will keep my customer name in the size. And if you notice, I'll change it to the distinct count of customer. So what does it do? If you notice, it tells me that Western Europe has 778 customer, but if you look at North Africa, it only has 429, right? Finally, in my format, I can also add the category label like this. And if you want, you can also change the colors and all of that. Like, these formatting options are so many. I'll not cover every single one, but I'm just adding a border so you can see it properly. Yeah, here we go. But what about the play axis? How do we see the change over time? Very simple. If you see, we have a play axis here. I just have to drag the year. So if you notice, I will drag my year in the play axis. And that's it. We have pretty much made very similar to what Gapminder had created. Even though my data is only for 4 years, if you can see, I can see my change over time. There we go. So we have actually taken an example that already existed. We have looked at the Gestalt principle, how to use color and shapes and sizes. And then finally, we have created it on Power BI. You can do it on Tableau as well, not on Excel. Also, let me show you some examples of how companies use scatter charts, right? Look at this. This is McKinsey, where there are 4 quadrants. We have KPMG, where we have above and below the line. We have PwC, which has multiple bands. Again, a McKinsey where the sizes are different. This McKinsey is very interesting. Right now, the size is the same, but they're showing a label for each point: technological, social, higher cognitive, basic, physical, right? So if you notice, it's such an interesting way of showing a lot of data in a very limited space. And you see, that is why you're learning Gestalt principle, not because you're not going to become a designer, right? But even for me as a analyst, as a consultant, learning these principles is very, very important, right? Look at this one, where do you see now even the shapes are different. Earlier, if you look at this, only the size was different, but in this was even the shapes are different. So we have a circle and we have a square, right? Again, you can see there are different types of examples. You'll find many, many more examples if you search them online, right? But why am I showing it to you? To convince you that we are teaching you this because it's very, very important, right? It's not because it looks cool. Some of the best firms in the world are actually using these things, right? Also, just to close this, see, it's very important to follow the right people, right? So before telling you Gen AI, like one person I'll share with you, I'm not really sure how I pronounce his name, but I'll share his LinkedIn profile with you. This guy is brilliant, right? What he does is he teaches you dashboard designing, right? So he talks about, again, what we learned, but in a very business friendly way. So let me show you his posts. I'll open one of them. Hold on. Look at this. Do you see? We are talking about how colors are used to great effect. Rather than using two shades of gray, he's using like a whatever, a gold color and a different color. Let me also show you this one. He also talks about why it is very important to focus on the top half because that is the first impression, right? That is what people see in a dashboard. So if you notice, while you expect that people will look at the entire report with the same level of detail, they might not. They might lose interest. Fatigue might come in, right? So, very simple points, right? And again, here we go. Look, there's just so much. I mean, exactly what we was talking about is pretty much covered the same thing, right? He's not the only one out there who's doing it. There are many other people like it. But I just wanted to tell you that you have to follow the right people. Now you will say, but can't you just tell us who the right people are? No, I will not tell you who the right people are. The reason is because I've spent many, many years compiling bookmarks and notes and knowing who the right people are. Now you will say, but you're being very selfish. I'm not being selfish. Try to understand. Even if I give you 1,000 links right now, I have thousands of links. Don't worry about that. I have no problem everyone sharing this link with you. But you know what the issue is? If I send you the link, what will you do with it? Because you don't know what the link is for. For example, do you know the difference between data goblins and visual capitalist? I do because I've actually seen the website. That is why you have to do this on your own. Yes, it will take you a lot of time, but that is how you will learn. Even if I send it to you, you will not even know how to use it. It will just lie in your folder somewhere on your computer, and you will actually not be using it at all. Right? So I'm just starting your journey by telling you one person's profile, and Jasmine shared Gapminder with you. Just keep on searching one website at a time, right? One by one, you accumulate everything. Do you think I created these 400 charts in one day? No, I have been working on it for, I think, 2 years, right? It has taken me a lot of time to compile all of this. Why would I not share it? No, I do share it. I have no problem sharing it. In fact, on the first slide I've written, please feel free to share. Just give me credit that, Havish has done it. I have no problem. But honestly, you will not learn anything. You will only learn when you put in the hard work and you do it yourself. Okay. And the final example is how to use generative AI. Okay. It's very interesting. Have a look. Let me close Power BI and Tableau. Okay. Let's find a report. So I'll just search for BCG finance, maybe. And I want to look at a dashboard. Okay. Let's pick this one. I really like this. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I will go to Gemini. Now, remember, even in the free version of Gemini, you're allowed to upload images. I do have the paid version, but I'll be using the free one. I'll put my image. This is what I'll ask it. I'll ask it, uh, does this image use Gestalt principles? If yes, which ones? This is the image, by the way, the one I used. Let me just zoom in and show you, right? Like this. And if you notice, it now tells you, yes, it uses proximity, it uses consistent formatting, it uses closure, figure ground, common fate. So cool, right? So you can also put a dashboard and tell it, ask it how to improve it. So I would say, be more critical. How can I make it even better? So now it tells you more things. Do a focal point, do labeling of data, have legibility of the color palette, right? Use white space better. Similarly, when you create your own dashboard, you can also put a screenshot on Gemini and ask it to give you feedback on the dashboard that you have created, right? That's a very good way of learning and improving the quality of your own content, right? So perfect. I think that's all from my side. That's what I wanted to share. Um, the floor is open for questions. Anything you would like to ask Jasmine or me?
I think the retention rate was really good. We started off with
This is the
31
right
people.
time, everyone. Anything you would like to ask? Jasmine and I have very common interest in a lot of stuff, but we also do very different things professionally. So it's a good combination where you can really talk to us about anything ranging from design to content to writing to analytics to dashboards to consulting, right? Yeah, that's the question. That's the $1 million question, Alok. How do you choose the right chart? Um, I'll give you a starting point. I think I covered this in one of my other webinars, but anyway, you just Google choose the right chart type. You have a lot of these templates, like a starting point available, where you can sort of figure out what is it that you're trying to show. Who are you trying to show it to? What is the context? Just Google it. Just Google choose chart type. There are many websites that talk about it, right? I don't need to I don't think I need to spend time on this. How do you get freelancing jobs in data analysis? I wouldn't know. I mean, if I knew, I would have happily told you, but I don't think I'll be the right person to be able to answer
But
that.
I can add, I can add
Jasmine, if
one
you
thing.
want to say something to
Yeah,
that.
yes, I can add something to this. If you're looking for freelance job, I would say start with a portfolio, first of all, and have a cold pitch ready. By cold pitch, I mean, or a warm pitch, like find out people who you would like to work with, then approach them through the right channels, whether an email, approaching them via an email would work, approaching them via LinkedIn would work, but make sure you have these dashboards and some forms of your experiences ready. Prepare a good portfolio, pitch them. If you need help writing content around like pitching for freelancing, just connect with me. I would help you more on that. And the right way to approach is to find the right people, pitch them with your portfolio, show them what you can do, and then get the conversation started from there, because not all the time people are looking for the full time, because they would probably hiring out there, right? And if you're looking for gigs, then it's better to connect with the right people, find them over LinkedIn, just see who is working in the similar niche or space as you. Have a list ready, have your sales or like the lead, create a sheet for yourself, find out the leads, find out the people who you can connect with, and start pitching them. The more you start pitching, you will eventually find people who might be interested in your service. So that's a good way to at least start from there.
There are no shortcuts to success, everyone. You have to make a portfolio, as Jasmine said, and you have to start sending out 100 messages every day, but not blindly. Send out 20, ask for feedback. Even if somebody doesn't reply, just tell them, I would love to get your feedback. It's very important to me. Maybe out of 20, two people might reply. And that feedback, that critical feedback is very important, right? At the end of the day, if you just blindly keep on doing the same thing over and over again, you can't expect different results, right? I have 15 years of work experience, and let me tell you, the number of people who have not replied to my messages on LinkedIn, even today, despite all the credentials I have and the whatever success I've got, 90% of people don't reply to messages for whatever reason. They're not interested, they don't have the time, they miss out. It's okay. That is how the world works, right? It's like what Michael Jordan says, no? Kobe Bryant used to say. I mean, look at the number of shots you miss. That's not what you count at the end, right? It's about how many shots went in. I will always talk about the clients I have. That is my success. You will never hear me talk about the 99 times things did not work out. So no shortcuts. Have to do it again and again and again and incrementally keep on getting better sort of that 1% every day, right? Perfect. So Jasmine, I both are on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with us if you have any further questions. But we finished right on time, which is great. I hope everybody had a good session. I let Jasmine, give the summary and any final tips. Anything else you would like to close the session with?
I would like to close the session with actually my experience. It was really great combining as so said, that we both do different things and we have a lot of common areas. So it was high time we were trying to, first of all, figure out what do we talk together about. So we figured out, okay, creativity is where we both align a lot together. He is very creative when it comes to data and everything technical and analytical. I'm very creative when it comes to, content and, the art and all of that. So we try to combine together with this session where we started off with a principle of design, and then we started for seeing how we can apply this together. And I really hope this session was meaningful, and it at least help you looking at the right direction when the next time you're, designing your dashboards or you're working on certain data. Now, this time you will have a little bit more clarity how you approach that data, how to present it visually in a more better way. So I hope this session was overall a little bit helpful. So yeah, that's all. And thank you so much, Havish sir, for this wonderful opportunity. I enjoyed it a lot.
Always my pleasure, Jasmine. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I think a few of the questions are unanswered. That's okay. Do feel free to just drop me a LinkedIn message. I will definitely reply either today, tomorrow's Saturday. So I'll do that. Okay? Thanks, everyone.